Namaste, your Zen Mommy here. We hold a lot of tension in our hips. So today we're going to do this short flow to not only open the hips, but strengthen them and work through all functional planes of movement. So come with me, go ahead and sit if you can on your heels. I want you to just feel the hips for a moment, feel the spine upright. Just relax the belly, relax the shoulders, relax the muscles in the face, maybe drop the chin, prick the ears slightly. We'll begin here shortly, but just take a minute to ground. So feel the hips against the heels, the tops of the feet and shins against the floor. So feel that heaviness quality through the lower body. And I want you to feel this uplifting quality. So gently lift the sternum while allowing the shoulder blades to drop down the back. Almost if you feel that the spine is kind of extending up out of the base of the pelvis or out of the hips. And just give me a few deep breaths. You may check in with the hips, notice if you feel any areas of tension, and notice where there's areas that might not have tension. So we start to make that differentiation between tightness and areas without tightness. Nice. When you're ready, just place your hands on your hips, come up onto the knees, tuck the toes behind you, and make sure the knees are about hip distance apart. We're going to work with some hip cars where we're just going to sit the hips back, hinging halfway at the waist. And then as you stand up, pressing into the toes, squeeze the glutes, squeeze the hamstrings. All right, so we're just going to work this half hip hinge as we start to warm up the hips. We're going to work from this position. So I want you to feel the stretch of the glutes and the tightening of the glutes and the hamstrings, because that's the primary mover to allow the lower body to lift. Just finding that functional breath in and out through the nose. Let's do about 3 more here. Just warming up the hips and the glutes. Last one, holding it here at the top, keeping the right toes tucked, step the left foot forward. And I want you to just lean into the left hip. So notice the front of the right thigh and hip flexor starts to stretch. You can allow the fingertips to come down to the block or the floor. Although there's no props needed for today's practice, hands can always stay at the hips. Engage the lower belly slightly and then press into that left foot. Bring the left knee back. Let's do that with the right. So stepping the right foot forward and just a little bit wider and lean in to that right. It's okay if that knee comes slightly forward of the ankle. We're really just focusing on that gentle stretch to the front of the left hip flexor. Relaxing the shoulders, relaxing the upper body, and that's okay if it doesn't look as deep. Maybe you're here and you get enough sensation through the front of that left thigh. When you're ready, press into that right foot comes back. This time, let's untuck the toes. Left foot steps forward and wide, lean in. This time, sweep the fingertips down, lift the upper body, lift the fingertips up overhead. Take a full deep breath. Good, hands come down, step the left foot back. Nice, upright the spine, right foot steps forward, untucking the toes, lean in toward that right knee. Inhale. Lift the arms, lift the upper body, a little deeper stretch. Good, as you exhale, bring the hands down, step the right foot back, just come to child's pose. Bring the knees wide, let the forehead come down. Take a few rounds of breath. Feel the hips in child's pose. Maybe you even feel a tingling sensation through the front of the thighs or the hip flexors. Nice. When you're ready, just take the hands about shoulder distance apart, tuck the toes underneath you. Let's find our way to downward facing dog. Bending the knees really generously, lift up the sitting bones high, pull the belly in. Feel the triceps wrap down toward the floor so that there's a broadening through the upper back. Nice. And this time we're going to continue with that lunge, but we're going to do that from down dog. So we started with that left foot. Come high up on the toes, look forward, step the left foot outside the left hand. This time stay in that runner's lunge for a moment. Feel the stretch. Step the left foot back, find downward facing dog. Right foot. When you're ready, bring the right foot up outside of the right hand, find that runner's lunge. Breathe here, nice long spine. And then when you're ready, step the right foot back, downward facing dog. This time when the left foot steps up, stay, look forward. Step the right foot up, this time outside of the right hand. Drop the hips down, find yogi squat. I'll turn towards you. So my toes are externally rotated. My knees and hips are externally rotated. I have the weight of the elbows on the inside of my knees, and I'm finding this upward lifting through the heart. So this may look like this for you, and it's okay if the heels lift off the floor, right? We're just trying to find that sensation, that deep stretch through the hip flexors. So our hips are in this external rotation. I want you to feel all four corners of the feet pressing down to the earth. And when you do, release the hands. We're going to press down to the feet, stand all the way up. So squeezing everything up to come up to stand, reach the arms up, breathe in. As you exhale, lower down the body, opening those knees up, dropping the hips down. At the bottom of the exhale, that's when the hips are all the way down. As we inhale, we're going to stand all the way up. Squeeze everything into the midline. And as you exhale, lowering down like an elevator until the hips come down, the knees widen. Let's do 3 more. Inhale, stand. Layering on the breath, exhale, sit into that yogi squat, malasana. Inhale, stand. Exhale, sit. Feeling those hips warm up. Last time, inhale, stand. Exhale, sit. This time as you inhale and stand, hinge at the hips, turn the toes forward. Find a wide-ish leg forward fold. So at the top of the mat, feet are just a little bit wider than hip distance. I want you to heel toe those feet underneath the hips. Looking at the big toes, grab the big toes with the peace sign fingers. Bend the knees, find a flat spine as you look forward to pull the belly in slightly. And as you exhale, hinge at the hips, extending the legs, find a forward fold. Elbows come out to the sides here. So we use the strength of our arms to pull us a little bit deeper into this forward fold. Notice there's a slight internal rotation of the inner thighs, rolling back and up. The sitting bones are separating toward the top as we find that length through the back of the body. God, taking some slow, deep, intentional breath. See if you can breathe space into the backs of the knees, the backs of the hamstrings. Breathing space into the low back. And when you're ready, releasing that bind, go ahead and roll like a rag doll all the way up to standing. We're continuing to warm up the hips. So feet are hip distance apart, hands on the hips. We're gonna work through some hip circles. So standing on the left foot, bringing the right knee across the body and opening it up to the outside. Right foot steps down, transfer the weight. Left knee comes across the body, opening it up, taking that full hip circle until you transfer the weight. And we can also speed this up. So just working, thinking of moving that femur bone in the hip socket. So finding that rotation, trying to make it as light and simple as just bone moving in socket. We're not having to grip or muscle it in any way. Maybe you notice some tight areas or some creaking or cracking as we move synovial fluid through the joint. All right, let's take it in opposite direction. So the right knee will come out and then move into the center before I transfer the weight. Same thing, we're just reversing the direction of that circle. It's a great little hip warm up you can do pre-sport, post-sport as we get into some of these little stretches at the end. Really, it's great to just move our hips every single day. So coming back to this as often as you'd like. God, finishing up the right and left side. And then when you're ready, find a flat back. We'll come back to the top of the mat. Find a forward fold. Bring in the hands down. Find a halfway lift, hands to the shins. Find a long, straight spine. And then bring the hands down. Step the left foot back like you're coming into pyramid pose. So squaring the hips off so that they're level with the front edge of the mat. Now I want you to bring the left foot behind the right and then take it even further to the right till we're in this kind of cross-legged pyramid pose. So you should feel a nice stretching sensation through the whole outer right thigh, hip, IT band. Drawing that right hip back, find that forward fold here. Again, if your fingertips aren't coming toward the ground, it's a great place to put blocks, bringing the floor to you. Letting the weight of the shoulders and the head, letting gravity assist in the stretch, squaring the hips off as best you can. Right hip drawing back, left hip drawing forward. So many classes are focusing on the hips, and it just tends to be a very tight area for most of us. A lot of sitting, a lot of driving. Our hips tend to seize up on us. Start to lose functional mobility. Take another round of breath here. Breathe in. Maybe an audible exhale would feel good, sighing it out. Hands come to the fingertips, look forward. Step the left foot up to meet the right. Just go ahead and pedal out the legs. Notice if there's a difference between that right and left side. And then when you're ready, find a flat spine. Step the right foot back like we're coming into pyramid pose, so squaring the hips off to the top corner of the mat. Step the right foot behind the left so you're on a balance beam. And then continue stepping to the left so you're in that cross-legged pyramid pose. Now gently draw that left hip back. You should feel a nice, intense stretch all down the left side of the hip, down the calf. And then when you're ready, fold your body in half. Right away, come to that nice functional breath, matching the inhales and exhales, breathing in and out through the nose. Drawing that left hip back and that right hip forward. Even notice the difference between the two sides. My left side tends to be a little tighter than my right. But that's just what's going on in my body, and sometimes it's different every day. Soft bend in the knees, never locking out the joints here. Just finding that nice stretch. Taking another round of breath here. And as you exhale, go ahead and unravel. Come to the fingertips, look forward to the top edge of the mat. Go ahead and step the right foot up to meet the left and come on down to the seat. We're gonna take a 90-90 stretch. So I'll show it side facing, then I'll show toward you. So I'm gonna line my left shin up toward the top edge of the mat, and my right leg's gonna come back till I make those kind of two 90-degree angles. So if you wanna see it from here, it's kind of making that windmill shape with the legs or a pinwheel. But I've got that, I'm gonna use that to kind of fold over my left thigh. So my left shin's in front, my right knee is extended behind. First, we're gonna pay attention to this back hip. So it's my right hip. I want you to squeeze this outer right hip, and I want you to lift off the lower shin and foot. So we're finding internal rotation of the femur bone. We're engaging the hip and glute to lift the lower leg, shin, and foot. We're gonna do this about 10 times. So a little bit of internal rotation, it's good for our hip. A little strengthening work here. I think I'm just rotating that femur bone in the hip socket, using my glutes and those supporting muscles to help along the way. And it's okay, even if that shin and foot comes off just an inch or a half of an inch. You notice mine's not coming up very far. Maybe about 3 more. We'll do about 10 total. And then we're just gonna relax over the front of this left shin. So once you've completed your 10, finding a nice long spine, I want you to bring the forearms down if you can to the block or the floor, and then find that nice stretching sensation through the outer left glute. If you can, bring the head down. We'll be here less than a minute, but just finding that nice stretching sensation through the left glute. You might even feel this into the left side of the low back, right? A lot of low back problems are anchored with tightness in the hips. It's actually not the low back at all. There's very little muscle in the low back per se, but that the hips kind of anchor the spine. See if you can think about breathing space into that left hip socket, almost separating the muscle fibers as you relax as much of the rest of the body as possible. Nice. Taking another round of breath or two. And then just making your way up. Pressing into the hands. Turn toward the long edge of the mat. Lift up the left knee. Lift up the right knee. So we're almost in this kind of seated malasana. And we're just going to take some windshield wipers of the knees side to side. So finding internal and external rotation. Again, thinking femur bone. That's the thigh bone in the hip socket. Just moving nice and gentle. Once you take it to the right and that right shin is forward, go ahead and lean to the right. So we'll set it up for that same stretch on the second side. So my right knee is outside the center line of my body. My right shin is about parallel to the back edge of my mat. My left knee is extending from my left hip. We're going to work on that internal hip rotation again. So lifting up the lower shin and foot of the left leg. Again, think of just kind of twisting, finding internal rotation on that left hip by engaging the glutes. Nice tall spine. Again, it's just that intention of that internal rotation. Should feel pretty good when we're done. We'll do about 10 reps. So finding that little lift when you're done with your 10. I'm about there. We're just gonna find that fold over that right thigh. So again, extending the body over that right shin and thigh just so you feel a nice stretch. And this may be a little bit more accessible than say pigeon pose. And so this might feel a little bit better that you can get in and start to stretch the hips without having any torquing on the knee. By all means, listen to the body. If there's a different hip stretch that feels better, if you'd rather go into pigeon and extend that left leg, by all means, you don't have to wait for me or anyone really to give you that permission to go there. And just take a notice, take a scan, see if you can breathe space into the right hip socket. Relaxing as much as the rest of the body. I notice I was just holding some tension in my head and neck, just allowing my forehead to come down and rest. Really nice. The simple, easy flow, just working on some mobility in the hips. Again, come back to this time and time again. Give me another round of breath or two. And then we'll just stay facing that back edge of the mat. So lift up the upper body, swing that left leg around gently, and go ahead and come onto your back. All right. So we're just going to do a few rounds of bridge pose. So both feet are going to be down into the mat. They're about, a foot or so away from the glutes, extending straight out from the hip bones. I'm going to press down evenly to both feet and then lower down. See if I can get all corners of that sacrum to land at the same time. So notice if there's any instability or wiggling through the pelvis. So this is just having our hips in that neutral position. Let's do about 10 of these. Using the posterior chain, so you've got calves, hamstrings, glutes, those big mover muscles lifting up and lowering, taking the weight out of the front of the thighs. I've got about 4 more here. Nice, just working, pressing down evenly through the heels, through the balls of the feet. Okay, once you've completed your 10, come in Supta Baddha Konasana. So that we're going to bring the soles of the feet together, opening the knees wide. We find that deep external rotation through the hips. Notice how that feels on the groin. Taking a few breaths here. So make any adjustments. I want you to make a nice seal with the toes. So bringing the toes together, bringing the heels together. We're gonna find this little lift. So press the feet against one another, squeeze everything into the midline, squeeze the glutes, and lift the hips. They're not gonna go as far. We're gonna lower everything down. So just like we did in those bridge, now we're working that external rotation through the hip. Lifting, we'll do about 10 of these. Notice it may not come off as far, that's okay. There's a slight engagement of the belly. Pressing down at the blade edge of the feet, that pinky toe side, pressing the feet together to lift. Notice how it feels a little different, working a little bit of strength here. So I've got about 4 more. When you finish your 10, we're just gonna be in that happy baby prep. So there we go. Bring the knees wide out toward the shoulders, wrap the hands around, and just allow the knees to hug in, let the lower legs be soft. Feel a stretch through the groin, a stretch through the hip flexors. It should feel pretty good after those bridge poses. And we'll take a variation of thread the needle. So bringing the knees into neutral, bringing the feet down, cross the right ankle over the left, take the arms wide out like wings and turn the palms up. I want you to bring that whole shape over to the left till that right foot maybe meets the floor, and then bend the left elbow. So the fingertips are up. They're going to be that little area to catch, just the inside of that right thigh. So I'm taking a little variation of spinal twist. Maybe I want to lift the head and gaze toward the right. We're just focusing on breathing space into the back, right hip, the right side of the low back, the right side of the sacrum. Feeling a stretch there, almost as if the sacrum was feeling heavy, that there was finding some separation away from the low back. Good. Taking another round of breath or so. And then just use the abdominal muscles to pull, bring the knees in through center, uncross the right leg, feet are hip distance apart again. The left ankle crosses over the right thigh, so in that kind of thread the needle position. Arms still come out like wings, and we'll take that whole shape over to the right this time. So you feel that stretch through the whole left hip now. Bending my right elbow, it's just a little landing point for the inner part of my left thigh. So I can just place my fingertips there. I can now focus on some weight and heaviness through the left side of the glute, the left side of the sacrum and low back, and just try to soften and breathe there. Maybe you want your gaze to lift up and turn toward the left. This gentle variation, or any variation of spinal twist that feels good in your body, by all means take that. Again, we're working through this class rather quickly, so just another breath or two. And then when you're ready, go ahead and bring that shape in, uncross the legs, bring the knees into the chest. Go ahead and roll over onto that left side to come up to seated. And this is where we'll end our time. If there's any other stretch that you need or that would feel good in your body, by all means take that. Or if you have time for that sweet, sweet Shavasana, always take that time to rest. We bring our hands in prayer at the center of our heart, bow toward our practice, our time together, our light. Namaste.